Hi Becky, how are you doing today?
Hi Anna, I'm really excited actually to be here to talk about changes and transitions, massive part of life.
And big topic as well, because I think as we're going to be discussing, there's so much wrapped up in the idea of a transition. Beginnings, endings, the messy middle, as we sometimes say. And so how are you feeling generally? You mentioned excited. How are you in the space today?
I'm feeling quite energized, I'd say. And I think changes is something that we deal with so often, like life has changed, right? And I think it's something that, we need to take a step back and actually think about sometimes. We don't even realize we're going through changes and transitions sometimes. So it energizes me to think about those things actually, and change can be for good and bad.
I really like that perspective actually, because I know one of the things that we were going to talk about today was the sort of feelings that are wrapped up in change and the change process. And I think there can be a focus, can't there, on the negative side of things. You know, maybe feeling afraid, it's the unknown, the uncertain, what's coming next. Sometimes we use our imagination to fill the gaps, which can make us anxious.
Yes.
But I like what you said there about actually sometimes change has positive impact as well. So there are opportunities for new things, new experiences, and growth and strength that can come from managing transitions.
Yes, yeah. And actually sitting with the discomfort of the change and understanding, that it's a kind of could be a message about something, that perhaps needs to change, or you're, in the middle of some sort of transition. What are your expectations when you kind of come out the other side? What's that going to look like for you? And also kind of letting go of the old.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because sometimes the letting go part can be the hardest. Letting go of what you know, what's habitual, what feels safe, and then saying, actually, I'm going to allow this process to happen and all the feelings to come through and see what happens next with this change.
Yeah.
And I think also maybe something to think about is that with change, there can be external change happening, but then there's the inner transition that we have to navigate to see our way through that. And I wanted to ask, what sort of things are you seeing in your work at the moment with students around transitions? I'm thinking there are lots of different places in the academic year where we have change.
Yeah.
We have big transitions of people coming into university, new course. We have obviously exams, new people to meet. We have graduation. We have finishing courses, going on to work. So there's quite a variety of notions of change, if you like, examples of change that we have within our academic calendar. So I just wondered what sort of things you might be seeing in your work with students at the moment.
Yeah, that's so true. There's so many kind of examples there. And I think it's important to kind of reflect on that everyone deals with it differently as well. So, the students are transitioning into a new degree, whether that's undergrad, postgrad, but each are going to deal with it differently and adapt differently. I think that's a key word there, adapting to the change, how they're going to do that. And I think it can be very overwhelming for someone that perhaps, isn't aware maybe of how bigger these changes can be and how they're going to manage them, and that uncertainty that you talked about. And one thing I talk about with students is kind of managing that uncertainty and acknowledging what is actually inside of their control. And I use this kind of fried egg, if you like, analogy, where it's called kind of control circles. But the kind of outer white part of the egg is all the things that are outside of our control that, we can't change. We don't have any influence over, the expectations of others, deadlines, results, the weather that day, right? And inside the kind of yolk part of the egg are the things we can control and the things we might have influence over. And it's, students find it interesting, helpful to acknowledge what is actually within their control, what can they focus on to kind of make those next steps, to let go, accept, the new, let go of the old. And it kind of puts things into perspective and can reframe things to help them move forward.
I really like that idea of the fried egg. It's very visual, isn't it, for the people listening, and really clear as to what might sit in which part of the egg image.
Yeah.
What sort of techniques do you use to work with students to try and help them put that focus back on the yolk part, if you like, what is within their control? Is there anything that you could sort of recommend, or anything that you are using currently that you think could be useful to talk about?
So, again, it's going to be individual for each person, but inside that is, what you're putting your focus on, your self-care, the strategies that you might use to reflect on the discomfort of the change. Are you talking to someone you trust? Are you journaling? Are you talking with a therapist? Or, what are the things that you're doing that helps you to understand, the discomfort of what you might be going through, and manage your expectations, like transitioning into university, what does that look like? What support do I have around me? Where can I go if I need support with something? Because, I think we underestimate sometimes these big steps that we have in our lives, and how we're going to manage them.
And I'm just really thinking there about how some of the feelings we can feel around change can sort of mirror what you might have in the grief cycle of emotions.
Yeah.
So we can go through a variety of feelings. We can start off feeling excited, a bit nervous. We can then move into, I guess, a reality phase where the newness wears off, and what we're having to face in our daily reality becomes more apparent. So the routines that we're starting, the deadlines, the routine of having to go to your lectures, meeting new people. And obviously routine can be really positive, but it's also just trying to find a structure, isn't it, within this new environment and balance. Exactly. So some of the students that I work with have multiple priorities. They're not just studying, they also have, caring responsibilities, or they might be working, or they are also looking for jobs at the same time. So I think prioritization and being able to know where you want to put your focus at any given time is really helpful. Because obviously we use this phrase, don't we, of time management. But really we can only manage time so far. Time is going to move.
It's in the white bit of the yolk, how time passes.
Exactly. That's a really nice example, actually. So sometimes there, if we say, right, I'm going to manage my time, well, we can, but really what we're doing is we are managing our priorities. We're deciding where we're going to put our focus and our attention in any given moment and for how long. That's where we are putting our attention in the yolk part. But if we're saying, I'm going to have to manage things outside of my control, then that can create anxiety. And also it can deplete our energy, because actually we're not moving towards our goals. Our attention is on something that we cannot control.
Yeah. And you mentioned there about the anxiety and discomfort that can come up, and perhaps the kind of negative thinking around it. I mean, how do you support students with that kind of element of the transitions that you support students with?
Yeah, really nice question. So I'm coming back to the idea of the CBT cycle, the cognitive behavioral therapy cycle, of which emotions, feelings, physiological responses and behaviors are all part. And we can go round in a cycle. And I think it's really important to recognize how our thoughts about our experience are framing also how we're feeling. So, for example, if we're having a difficult time settling in, we can start to think to ourselves, I must not belong here. I'm an imposter. I don't deserve to be here. I'm not as good as everyone else.
Comparison there.
The comparison, and it's so rare that the comparison we make is positive, isn't it? It's usually a negative comparison.
Yeah, we always focus on the negative, don't we?
That negative bias. So thinking, I don't quite match up to others. Whereas actually what we could do is say, okay, I'm feeling quite nervous about meeting new people. I'm finding this change really quite hard. And I want to have some space to process that. But I also want to know that I'm my best supporter through that discomfort. I can feel it. I can support myself. I don't need to compare myself in a negative way to others.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm talking with students, that can also add to suffering and difficulty.
Yeah.
Not just the situation, but we kind of blame ourselves for feeling that way. And so I think when I meet with students, what we try and do is have a bit of time and space to talk about what is happening, what's been happening outside in the world, what's happening inside internally for them. What do they want from the meeting? What would they like to have by the end of the meeting? And then we start to talk a bit about how they might be seeing their experience, how they might be responding to themselves in that time. And then we discuss options, you know. Is that the only option? Are there other options available? What would it look like? What strategies do you think would be helpful? And we do a mixture of the sort of emotional support and the practical, making a plan, that sort of thing. And it doesn't have to be a huge plan. It can be really small things. It can just be, for example, I'm going to go to bed an hour earlier tonight or this week because...
It's the little things, isn't it?
It's the little things. The tweaks you can make to your routine that enable you to feel a benefit without having to make huge changes when you're already going through a lot.
Yeah. It's back to basics a lot of the time, isn't it? Sleep, movement, you know, this kind of self-care strategies and focusing on what you can do, what's within your control to, you know, improve your situation. I liked what you said there. You know, it's very kind of coaching kind of based, isn't it? And, you know, the students, you know, we're all experts of ourselves, and it's kind of allowing that space for students to reflect on their own, what works for them, their own strategies.
And that opportunity for reflection is really important, isn't it? Because it opens up a space where we have a choice, or where we feel we have a choice, where sometimes we don't feel that we do.
And feeling heard as well and listened to, I think, is a key part of it.
And also what I'm thinking about here is we've spoken about change and transitions. We've spoken about the external change and then the internal process that happens, going through perhaps shock, difficulty, anger, sadness, acceptance, etc. Some of these feelings can be mirrored when we're going through a process of change. But then if we were to go a level deeper and think about change itself, there's two types of changes, aren't there, really? The ones we choose and the ones that happen to us.
Yes.
And I just wanted to touch on that because I think that level of detail is really important in terms of some of the things that I talk to students about. Sometimes it's saying, okay, this is the program you've chosen. What's happening here? What's within your gift? And other times there can be that feeling of this has happened to me. Financial challenges, something unforeseen has happened, a bereavement, for example, or a change of schedule last minute that's really hard to accommodate. And I think what's really important to come back to at this point is the fried egg image that you gave earlier. It's so easy, isn't it, in those moments when changes happen to us or it's not been our choice.
We've lost control.
We've lost control. And therefore, it's really easy for our attention to then go onto the things we can't control in a misguided attempt to try and control. But actually, it's saying, this has happened to me. I can't change that that's happened. But what I can do now is X, Y, and Z in this moment that's within my gift to influence.
Exactly. I think that's really key kind of message there, you know, looking at what you can control. Because that uncertainty it's a loss of control, and that can be scary and overwhelming when it happens without your, you know, your say so, or that can be really scary. So focusing on those small things, and they can be little things, like looking after yourself in that time, that can help you kind of move forward with a new chapter, reframing it.
Yes,
but it's difficult.
It is difficult. And I think that's why we generally find change challenging, don't we?
Yeah.
Because it takes us out of what we feel we're in control of, and also what's habitual for us. So we were speaking earlier on about critical voice, and also about our negative bias as well towards perhaps thinking unpleasant things about ourselves or comparing ourselves unfavorably.
Yeah.
Is the critical voice something that you see working with students?
Yeah, a huge amount, actually. I think we can be our worst enemy, can't we? And so hard on ourselves, and that kind of critical voice on our shoulder can, really, make us down, actually. And like you said, that negative bias, we can get a huge amount of positive feedback. And guess what? We're going to look at that more constructive, if you like, piece of feedback, and we're going to think about that for hours, days, maybe afterwards. And it's a big presenting theme I see in students, actually. And one way that I support students with it is focusing on the challenging, more positive evidence there is to combat that. You're taking a step back and saying, You've got here for a reason. You've worked really hard to get here. What's the positive evidence that shows that? Let's have a look at the positive feedback that you've got. Your own kind of positive feelings about being on the course, and just gently challenging that. And that little critical voice. We can't exactly get rid of it. We can't. What we resist persists. But it's listening to it, but also challenging it and saying, yes, how can we improve, perhaps, but also not kind of knocking ourselves too much, and kind of being kind to ourselves and thinking, okay, that's something I could maybe work on, but look at all this great evidence that shows that I did a good enough job too. And it's that good enough, isn't it? It's not this perfection, impossible perfection that a lot of our students are striving towards all the time, which is unsustainable. It's what's good enough.
I really like that, and I think it's such a useful aspect to think about, and a way of looking at that. And also what I was hearing there was, it's as if we have to really work quite hard to focus on the positive, to find the positive, because we've been so wired to maybe look for threat or look out for criticism. So actually we have to actively seek it out. It might not always happen naturally, particularly when we are experiencing challenges or we have things happening in our lives that are difficult. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's so much harder to focus. And it's not just I want to kind of reiterate, it's not this kind of toxic positivity where we just focus, look at the positive, look on the bright side. It's not that. It's looking at what evidence there is that shows that you are doing a great job, you're doing your best. And that's all anyone can kind of ask for, isn't it? And not kind of beating ourselves up if we have had a bad day, or, comparing ourselves to the person next to us that might have a completely different set of circumstances. And guess what? They've had a bad day, last week, or, and we're all kind of going through our own challenges with things, and we might only see the best side of things, and supporting each other as well in that.
Absolutely, because we don't know what other people might be experiencing. We're just going by what we see and what we notice at the time. But there might be things that they've got going on in their lives that are difficult as well. And I just wanted to ask, we've spoken about critical voice, but have we got any examples of what that might actually be like to experience? That sounds like almost a tricky thing to go into, but what would that sound like? What would that feel like?
I think it sounds like the kind of common things that we kind of say to ourselves, like, why did you do that? Or you knew that was going to happen. Or, it's that kind of chiding ourselves, and we almost don't even realise we're doing it half the time. But that self-awareness, actually, hang on, no, I did my best there.
Yes.
You know, and noticing those kind of, you know, really quite mean thoughts, you know, and perhaps reframing, like we've said before, you know, if a friend of yours was saying the same thing to themselves, and you heard it, if all those thoughts that go on, we could hear, you know, you'd be saying, well, that was actually really mean to say to yourself, or, you know, and kind of reframing that different perspective can help us understand, actually, you know, I need to be kinder to myself. And sometimes it's a really simple thing, you know, being kind, looking after yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And I think how we speak to ourselves is not how we would speak to others.
No, it's not.
And what I was just wanting to sort of pick up there as a additional thought was, it's as if we can't just say, I'm going to turn off this voice. We almost need an alternative there. So if we're going to not do something, we need something that's going to take its place. And it sounds like that compassionate voice, I'm here, I will support you, etc.
Yeah,
whatever that word is for you, or the messages that you find helpful, that's the sort of part we need to attract and focus on in our inner dialogue. And then also, just to finish up, was around, I think we want to get rid of the critical voice because it feels so horrible, and it can feel like we are against ourselves. It's like the enemy within. But also, what I understand about psychology is that we don't do anything that doesn't have a kind of benefit. But it's hard to see what the benefit is of a critical voice. But my understanding is that actually a critical voice sometimes serves a protective function. It's protecting us from shame. It's protecting us from fear. It's almost denying the self so that we aren't seen, we aren't heard, so therefore we're not at risk of threat. It keeps us back, keeps us down.
Yeah.
So it's almost as if it's a protective function gone into overdrive. And I think if we can maybe think about finding compassion for the critical voice, understanding it, rather than thinking I need to get rid of this, that will help in terms of how we're talking to ourselves, how we're able to navigate these challenges.
Absolutely.
And I think what might be quite nice to move on to now is the sort of takeaways that we want to share with listeners. So one of the things that, if we were to think about antidotes, if you like, or things that can help during times of change.
More things in the yolk.
More things in the yolk.
Egg. Yeah, definitely. And I think a big one is a connection. And we talked before about the support network, you know, through change, who can I rely on? And that connection, you know, to ourselves as well. And, you know, acknowledging the change, our feelings around the change, that emotional curve of, you know, anger, denial, sadness, whatever that might be for you, working through that, and then, you know, sitting with it and working through it.
So sitting with it. And also something that I think is quite useful is probably touching on our values, understanding what's important to us, understanding what matters, connecting with those as part of that connection to self. So what do I value? What's important to me? I value family. I value growth. I value achievement, for example. They might be something that somebody thinks, actually, this is where my energy goes. This is what matters to me. Drilling down into those and maybe setting some goals based on those values. Small goals, big goals, doesn't matter. It's just feeling that sense of agency again, and that sense of focus, isn't it?
Because the change might not have, you know, affected those at all. It might just be that you're on a slightly different path, you know, and, you know, it's not linear, is it? You know, we're going through change all the time. And as long as, like you said, we've got those core values that we kind of, you know, stick to in our choices and our, you know, our work and our personal life, our relationships, that we can kind of stay kind of trusting to that core and stay grounded in that.
Yes. I really like that idea, actually, you know, trusting the self and extending that trust to others, with people that we're close to. So building community, connection to others, making sure that we are having conversations, making sure that we are getting involved in activities that maybe interest us, or joining societies or clubs, or just meeting a friend for a coffee, whatever feels doable for you. And then I think the final thought that was coming to me was around, again, the framing, but around the idea that we can look at discomfort as part of the learning process. So if we're going to grow, we will be taken out of our comfort zone and we'll go through the stages of competence, if you like, on that learning journey. Discomfort of which is one of the feelings that we will come up against, as well as frustration, confusion, probably, because we're doing something new, we're learning something new that hasn't been done before by us. So there is that sense of discomfort being a usual part of the journey. And then also framing that as an opportunity for growth, that there are positive things that can come from change. They might not be instant, but that you might be sowing the seeds for something that's going to come later that you're really going to benefit from, new perspective, and you can look back and say, look what I've achieved by going through this process.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.